Scorn is a unique game, and one that's self-contradictory in many ways. Its H.R. Giger-inspired aesthetic is gorgeous, yet grotesque. The game design can seem inviting, yet its gameplay can be off-putting. And it runs on a capable engine known for powering one of the most popular games in the world, while also being a major source of frustration for PC gamers worldwide. Before I get into this, let me start by complimenting Ebb Software on what I think they've achieved with Scorn. I think it really does its artistic inspiration justice. This looks like a world H.R. Giger would be proud of. It's a brutally difficult game, but that's intentional, and I think it mostly accomplishes what it sets out to do quite well. And it embraces the fact that it is definitely not a game for everyone, which is honestly rather refreshing in a world plagued with always online experiences, riddled with gambling-inspired mechanics. Needless to say, I'm definitely interested to see what Ebb Software does in the future. I do hope they give the PC version of their next game a little more love though. By now, most of us are familiar with the hashtag coined by Digital Foundry, stutter struggle. But after experiencing Scorn, I feel like we need another hashtag for a different, yet equally common issue: setting struggle. In an ideal world, console equivalent settings would not only be easy to spot, they would be clearly labeled like the ones found in the PC ports of Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War. Not only do we not get that here, but we don't even get labels that make much sense in any context. Take for instance this one, which just says visual effects, or things like the FOV option being buried under controls. The biggest problem here though is that rather than allow users to toggle settings one by one, each of the handful of graphical selections available controls several things at once. For example, the one labeled shadows controls the quality of not just shadows, but dynamic lights as well. And the only way you can tell this is by reading a short blurb displayed at the bottom of the screen when highlighting each one. What this ultimately means is that you have no real control or way to optimize the game to your liking using the in-game settings. Just a handful of predetermined groupings that affect performance in varying ways. And to top it all off, the game is slathered with a thick layer of film grain which you can't turn off. It reminds me of a camera with the ISO set to 32,000, which is probably why they did it, but it sure makes things like comparing settings between platforms hard. It is possible to eliminate the film grain and modify a few other things by editing a config file with commands you can find on sites like the PC Gaming Wiki, among other places, but doing this messes with the color grading, and that could be controversial to some. The point is, you shouldn't have to go outside the game itself to change these things. On the performance side, the game does attempt to recommend settings based on your hardware, but in my experience, it seems to be a little conservative. Here I'm running the game on a pretty old PC equipped with a 3770K and a GTX 1080, and with everything set to high at native 1440p, it stayed above 60 FPS the entire time, so that the recommended settings option could easily land you a degraded experience for no discernible reason. All that said though, while the game easily hits high frame rates, that hardly matters when the experience is marred by shader compilation stutter. All 4 PCs I tried this game on stuttered the first time through an area, which is particularly bad when talking about a puzzle game where the entire experience hinges on figuring things out for the first time. Even knocking the texture settings down didn't help alleviate the issue. On the positive side though, if you ever get lost, you'll be able to tell if you've already been through an area or not based on how much stuttering you see. If it's really bad, then you know you're headed in the right direction. All kidding aside though, I think I've established that this port is not ideal and performance issues keep it from being a great experience. But what about those settings? How do they actually affect performance? We know from analysis done by Digital Foundry that the Xbox Series X version of the game uses AMD's FSR2. Thankfully, that option is available to PC users too, but sadly, that's it. No DLSS, XeSS, or even the option to use Unreal Engine's own temporal upsampling. Digging further into the quality settings, going from the high to low preset, it appears that the Series X version is a pretty close match to the PC's high settings, but given the lack of customization, I've decided instead of using the Series X version as a target, it might be more helpful to use a PC with lower end specs as a target instead, since that's who's probably most interested in this type of video anyway. To do this, I've decided to use my aforementioned PC with an old i7 3770K, GTX 1080, and 16GB of DDR3 2133 RAM. And keep in mind, these are averages. Starting from the top of the list, the visual effects setting controls 3 aspects: particles, shading, and foliage quality. Starting with everything at high, knocking it to medium, I observed a performance increase of roughly 2%. Going to low increased that further to 3%. Post-processing, according to the game, controls the quality of post-processing effects. Starting with everything at high, knocking this to medium, I observed a performance increase of roughly 5%. and going to low increased that further to around 7%. Funnily enough, turning post-processing down to low shuts the film grain off entirely, but that leads to some atrocious color banding. It also turns off the bloom effect, making the lighting look less dramatic. Shadows, as mentioned before, controls shadows and dynamic lights. Starting with everything at high, putting this to medium, I observed a performance increase of about 3%, going to low increase that further to roughly 4%. Low, however, has a noticeable effect, causing some dynamic lights to turn off completely, which really hurts the overall aesthetic, so I probably wouldn't go below medium. Textures controls the texture streaming and filtering quality. Despite there being 3 quality settings, I couldn't find any significant difference in VRAM usage between any of them. Both medium and low boosted performance by just 1% at most. As an aside, I would actually recommend forcing anisotropic filtering yourself system-wide so you basically never have to worry about it again, with a few exceptions of course, like if you do a clean driver install. It shouldn't really have any performance impact with most modern gaming rigs, and it's easy to do. NVIDIA users, for example, just need to toggle the option on in the NVIDIA control panel. I'd recommend choosing at least 8x, 16x for best results, and setting the quality to high. Finally, anti-aliasing controls the temporal anti-aliasing quality. It's honestly really hard to spot any difference between the 3 settings here, and the performance increase at medium was 2% on average, going to low saw no gain from there. In the end, if you are determined to play this game on PC, my recommended settings are pretty simple. Keep everything at high. If you do need more frames, the first thing you want to try is putting post-processing to medium, since that has the biggest hit to performance, but doesn't look much different at medium. After that, the only other setting with any real impact to performance is visual effects, but I wouldn't go below medium there either. If you are at a higher resolution like 1440p or 4K and want a nice performance win without sacrificing much visually, just toggle FSR to quality. On average, doing this at 1440p, my test system saw a performance increase of 8%, with some scenes going as high as 18%. Setting FSR to balance to performance is definitely an option at 4K, but at 1440p the image just gets too muddy for my liking, so I can't really recommend it. In the end, Scorn is a very interesting game, but I had to call out the quality of this port, as the setting struggle is a disturbing trend that's been on the rise in PC gaming for quite a while. And this isn't just a problem with indie games. Even big AAA productions like the Dead Space remake have similar issues with their menus. Performance issues combined with no real way to alleviate them is frustrating, and something needs to change. I get that it's more effort on the developer's part, and a small studio like Ebb Software may not have the resources to prioritize a platform with an infinite number of configurations, but there has to be some sort of middle ground. Because if this continues to be the norm, a lot of games worth experiencing, especially indie titles, will suffer needlessly. And that hurts not only developers, but the medium as a whole. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. If you do, be sure to hit the bell so you won't miss out when any future videos go live. Till next time.